He asks the question, he says, do you know what the vision of the divine consciousness is like? Do any of you guys know? What is the vision of the divine consciousness like? It is like the sudden illumination of a dark room when a match is struck. The incarnation of God is accepted by those who follow the path of bhakti, the devotional path. A woman belonging to the Kartapajja sect observed my condition and remarked, you have inner realization. Don't dance and sing too much. Ripe grapes must be preserved carefully in cotton. The mother-in-law lessens her daughter-in-law's activities when the daughter-in-law is with child. One characteristic of God realization is that the activities of a man with such realization gradually drop away. Inside this man, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, is the real jewel. So, she was noticing the signs of someone who has realized that, and told him not to dance and sing too much, not to get attached to the world, not to come down too low, because for a Gyani, bhakti is not advisable, and vice versa, in that sense. But of course, she had no idea who he was, and that he would be way beyond the touch of those things, since he himself was a direct manifestation like that. But that notion that things fall away, the activities of a realized soul fall away because the ego is gone. There's no egoism there. And so they don't see anything missing in the moment. They don't see any need to change the moment. They find the moment to be perfect as it is. And so until a movement is inspired, from their nature, there's just stillness, there's just contentness. There's nothing, they don't need to change a stimulus, a condition, or a circumstance to find their bliss. They see it perfect as it is, because they see it from they don't even see it from a vantage point. It's indescribable how they actually see it, because they see it all at once. They're not a particular, and they don't have any identity with the particular. For Ramakrishna, it was he had to practice. He had to practice in order to bring himself down out of samadhi. He had to practice being attached to something, to having a desire. And so the desire that he chose was the desire of being with the lovers of God, being with the devotees. And so his desire for being with devotees was his anchor for keeping him down in the relative zone, so that he could actually speak, so that he could actually teach. And, whenever he went into samadhi, to get out of samadhi, he often would ask for a piece of candy or a sweetmeat or a glass of water. He would manufacture some sort of desire in order to bring his awareness or his consciousness down to a particular. You see, so when it's in that state of knowledge, there's all desires, as we've talked about in the past, arise from the body and the mind. No desires arise from the self. So that's why desire is such an unhealthy place, because to have desires, you have to believe yourself to be body or mind, and to be attached to them, attached to the thoughts in those areas. And so without that attachment, and without the identity of body and mind, no desires arise in us. There is no need for anything. It's pure inspiration at that point. It's the divine nature within that inspires a movement in the moment, if it's part of the divine will, the will of everything combined, as it were. And so he was dancing at that level, and because of his wanting to be with the devotees and nurturing that desire in order to stay conscious of a singular point, of a particular body, he would dance and he would sing. And so this woman, who obviously was very advanced practitioner, that she could recognize the divine soul, was warning him, ripe grapes have to be preserved like cotton candy. To be very careful. Don't lose your understanding of things. And he goes on. He says, and she points at him and said, "Inside this man is the real jewel." So she herself had some vision, because you can't see things in others that you haven't seen in your own self. So she was very astute, but still not quite aware of his real nature, because his real nature is very rare. An incarnation happens. Well, look how long it's been, between Ramakrishna and Jesus, or between Jesus and Buddha. long time, several hundred years, if not 1,000 years, pass between the incarnations we know of anyway. Perhaps there's been times where it's been more subtle, but so recognizes him as the real jewel. And Ramakrishna goes on and says, watching me eat, she remarked, "Sir, are you yourself eating or are you feeding someone else?" Right? Because a person who's not attached to the body mind, when they would be eating, they would have the distinct impression of feeding something else, someone else, because there's no identity with their particular body. He demonstrated this. Well, I don't know that he was demonstrating it, but he did demonstrate it at another place in the gospel where they were all on a steamship riding on the Ganges and nobody had had any lunch. Everybody was really hungry. And somebody had given Sri Ramakrishna a bag of sweets. And he brought it out, and everybody was thinking he was going to split the sweets up and, and share them with everybody. So they were really looking forward to getting some sweets. And Ramakrishna sat there and ate them all, every one of them. And they were all very, very, kind of piqued at the fact he had sat there and done something so unusual. He hadn't shared them and hadn't passed them around. But then they all realized that their hunger had been sated. They were no longer hungry. And M goes on to say, they realized that because of his non-attachment, what benefited him benefited all. And so him eating was like him eating through everyone's mouth. And so they all got the benefit of that. And the other time that this happened was when he was sitting on the shore and he was watching some fishermen fish. And I guess one of the hired hands on the boat did something wrong, and the master of the boat whipped him. And Ramakrishna got welts across his back as he yelled out in pain. So his consciousness, his awareness, the awareness of a divine soul, the awareness of an enlightened person, is not attached to the particular, because inside all of us, that I am feeling that we have is singular. It belongs there. There is only one, and it is the same one in each one of us. It doesn't become particular until it shines through the ego and through the mind, or through the mind causing an ego, a sense of awareness, and that locks us into a particular perspective. And so Jesus, I was going to say Jesus. So Ramakrishna here has transcended that. His I is not connected to a particular body unless he is choosing that for the sake of his teaching. So he says the feeling of ego has covered the truth. Narendra once said, "As the eye of man recedes, the eye of God approaches." Kedar says, "The more clay there is in the jar, the less water it holds." Right? So he's kind of saying what we just finished kind of talking about there, that as the egoistic eye, the eye of the particular, the eye that's attached to a body and a mind, as that notion recedes, the eye of God comes forward, which is another way of saying that the eye becomes aware of a broader and broader and broader scope, and connects to all minds and all bodies in a sense. And can affect them and is affected by them, but he knows himself to be none of them, or all of them, which is actually the same statement from another side. But it's how he knew how to teach. It's how he knew what to say. It's how he was able to bless people, because he was them. There was no separation between him and them, he and them, between him, no, him and them. And so there was no separation there. So when he teaches, when a divine incarnation teaches, she is able to teach with perfection, not because she can see into your mind, but because she is you looking through your mind, but without the attachment, right? And that's the distinction of a divine soul, someone who is realized. He says, Krishna said to Arjuna, "Brother, you will not realize me if you possess even one of the 8 siddhis, one of the 8 spiritual gifts, He said, these give only a little bit of power. With healing and the like, one may do only a little good to others. Isn't that true?" And so that these powers, these, spiritual powers, Ramakrishna always said, don't pay any attention to them. If you happen to gain one of them, Don't use it, he said. Just understand it's sort of like a road sign saying you're going the right direction. But if you use it, it becomes a trap for you. It becomes part of your egoism, you know. So everybody will believe different things about that. It's not required belief system for Vedanta. So don't be don't be put off if you don't have a deep faith in the ability to heal or the ability to read minds or such things, the ability to become real small or real big, the ability to fly. There's, some of these things are recorded in some of the old scriptures, and they're considered the siddhis, and that they can be acquired through practice. If you Raja Yoga is has a lot of that in there if you are curious about it, but don't go chasing after them. That'll be against the point here. The point is that they're not there to be used in that way. That there's really not a big benefit to them. They're just a sign that you are becoming yourself. You are slowly approaching the goal, and see them as such. Don't use them because they become a trap of ego. The ego grows when they're used. So he says, therefore, I prayed to the Divine Mother for pure love only, right? A love that does not seek any return. I never asked for any occult powers, right? So there he's showing us through example. Don't look for them. The one most important thing is love. You know, a love, to have a love that needs nothing returned, to feel that love for the divine, to feel that love for others, and even to feel that love for yourself in an odd way. At some levels of egoism, we forget to love ourselves. And so always keep your eyes on the one most important thing, right? I remember in the monastery, many years ago, I was just all heated up about some decision that was made, you know, about the monastery, about the Vedanta Center there in San Francisco. And I was just going on and on and on about it. And one of the devotees named Charles, he came in to the kitchen and I was just still ranting about it. And after I'd gone on, he finally stopped me, put his hand on my shoulder, and he looked at me. He said, "That's fine, Santosh." That was my name at the time. He says, "All that's fine, Santosh, but is it the one most important thing?" And I tell you, I just felt like somebody had given me the warmest hug. Like all of a sudden, I just felt this detachment in my head. I just let go of all my concern about that particular decision. And I felt such a lightness. It was so wonderful. I mean, that's the benefit of having holy company, of having each other in our lives. Somebody can just put their hand on your shoulder and say, dude, whoa, chill. Is that the one most important thing? And you just snap back to remembering, oh, ha, ha, ha. And it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to be able to let go and to realize, no, this isn't the one most important thing. I can live with anything if I have the one most important thing. And so while Ramakrishna was talking this way, he went into a deep samadhi. He sat there motionless, completely forgetful of the outer world. Then coming down to the sense world, he sang, "Ah, friend, I have not found him yet, whose love has driven me mad." At the master's request, Ramlal sang a song describing how Chaitanya embraced the monastic life. "Oh, what a vision I have beheld in Keshup Bharati's hut. Gora in all his matchless grace, shedding tears in 1,000 streams. Like a mad elephant, he dances in ecstasy and sings, drunk with an overwhelming love. Rolling flat on the ground and swimming in his tears, he weeps and shouts Lord Hari's name, piercing the very heavens with his cries, loud as a lion's roar. Then, most humbly, he begs men's love to feel himself the servant of God. Shorn of his locks, he's put on the yogi's ochre cloth. Even the hardest heart must melt to see his pure and heavenly love. Smitten by man's deep woe, he has abandoned everything and pours out love unstintingly. Oh, would that Prem Das were his slave, and passing from door to door, might sing Gauranga's endless praise. Just a beautiful, just a beautiful description of that divine love. Just being overcome with that, seeing the sorrow of people, seeing the struggle of life for people, and to roll in tears and crying out for their freedom. feeling that deep, deep love for everyone and that everything. The master asked Mani Malik to quote the words of Tulsidas to the effect that one who had developed love of God could not observe caste distinctions. Mani: the throat of the chatak bird is pierced with thirst. All around are the waters of the Ganges and the Jamuna, the Saraju, and the innumerable other rivers and lakes. But the bird will not touch any of these. It only looks up expectantly for the rain that falls when the star Swati is in the ascendant. Right, so it's just talking about that renunciation. We don't that chatak bird. It's a mythical bird that will only drink the water. Only will drink water that falls from the rain when that star is in the ascendant. And he's really talking about the renunciate who refuses any pleasure of the world. Just the pleasure of the divine presence is all they will accept. To let go of all the pleasures and never go to slake your desires from any other source. To make God, that divine presence, and this will happen to all of us in time, because that divine presence becomes the answer to every one of our desires. It's the fulfillment of every desire. It's actually what we are looking for in every desire. But in our confusion, because of our attachment to body and mind, we confuse desires for things of the material. And material can only reflect the divine. It can't provide you with the divine. And so by living a life where you go nowhere else, you're not fooled by the siren calls of desire, but you stay only in the presence of the beloved. So he's talking about that. The master, that means that the love for the lotus feet of God alone is real. Everything else is illusory. That's that idea that all of the material world is only a reflection of our consciousness, a reflection of what is real. That to find true fulfillment, to find that one most important thing, that one most beautiful thing, is to go inward to the shrine of the heart, to the very source of being, of love, and of wisdom, and to go nowhere else but there. Mani continues. Tulsi also said, at the touch of the philosopher's stone, the 8 metals become gold. Likewise, all castes, even the butcher and the untouchable, become pure by repeating Hari's name. Without Hari's name, the people of the 4 castes are all but butchers. Saying that it is the divine name. Right? When you chant the name of the beloved, the thing about that is that there's a manifestation with that name, because you can't say the name of something without seeing the form. If I say to you milk, immediately you can't help but to think of milk. It's that joke about the white elephant in the room. No, you can't say, don't think of the white elephant in the room. And immediately what you're doing, you're thinking of the white elephant in the room. And so he's saying here that as you repeat the name of God, that purifies us little by little. Hafiz has a beautiful poem where he talks about the name of God being like pouring a liquid through cheesecloth, that every time you say the name, you become a little bit purer. And that that presence, the awareness of the presence grows within you. And that's how we go from imagination to reality. At first, our thinking of God is an imagination. We try, as we say our mantra, we try and picture our highest ideal, our chosen ideal within our hearts. And it takes a lot of work, because you can't keep your mind still and you can't keep your focus going, and you sit there. But if you keep going, if you just tenaciously keep repeating that name, after a while, after you've been doing it, a slight bliss begins to form. And of course that will catch your attention, and then you'll lose it, and then you'll go chase it, and that will keep you from finding it for a while. And then you realize that it was the lack of desires that allowed that bliss to manifest. And so then you find that space again. You sit there chanting the name of God, and that presence grows. And Vivekananda says that in time, that presence becomes more noticeable and larger to you than the external world. And when that starts happening, that's where you find your equanimity of peace, where you're able to love people with equalness, with equanimity. because you're sitting in it, you're soaking in it, it's surrounding you always, and so you're beginning to act from that experience of love, that experience of bliss. And so chanting Hari's name turns the worst of us, he's saying here. The butcher, the butcher caste in India is, oh my gosh, that's such an impure caste in their eyes. And so even they are saved by repeating the name of God, that everybody can become pure. There's nobody here, nobody anywhere who is beyond the reach of divine love, divine grace. That is all of our birthright. It's not something taped on. It's not something we paid for. It's the very part of ourself. The presence of God is the only thing real in this world. And so seeing that, repeating that name and soaking yourself in it is making Ramakrishna sit in samadhi right now. Master, the hide that the scriptures forbid one to touch can be taken inside the temple after it has been tanned. Man becomes pure by repeating the name of God. Therefore, one should practice the chanting of God's name. I said to Jadu Malik's mother, in the hour of death, you will only think of worldly things, of family, children, executing the will, and so forth. The thought of God will not come to your mind. The way to remember God in the hour of death is to practice now, the repetition of his name and the chanting of his glories. If one keeps this up, this practice, then the hour of death one will repeat the name of God. When the cat pounces upon the bird only squawks and does not say, Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna. It is good to prepare for death. One should constantly think of God and chant his name in the solitude during the last years of one's life. If the elephant is put into the stable after its bath, it is not soiled again by dirt and dust. So, saying that death is like the stable, that if you go into the stable and or if you're in the last year, I guess that last year before death would be the stable. And so if you get cleaned up by the name of God in that last year and you put into the stable, you're not going to get dirty again. So in those days, those last days, well, forget those last days. Because why? Because you don't know when those last days are. You could be well into your last days already. I remember asking Swami Prabhupada, and I know I've told you this before, but it's always nice for me to think about it again. Swami Prabhupada driving back from Olima, he had turned 80. And I asked him, I said, Maharaj, what is it like to be 80? And he looked at me and said, oh, we'll be personal now, will we? And he smiled. I said, yeah, Maharaj. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, Maharaj, I think of my life, I've got 20, 30 years at least in front of me. And so the future's got plenty of room for me. And I think about it a lot. And I said, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to be toward the end of my life where I can't even know if 5 years is worth planning. And he smiled and he says, oh, see, being 80 and being 20 are the same for me. He said, I knew when I was 20 that I had not even one more day promised to me. And so I lived my life that way. And I loved that answer. I was so satisfied with that answer. It's like, that is so cool. One, because I thought, well, cool, I can deal with that now. My life is great. So my life can still be great at 80. I don't have to I won't have to sit there and fret about the lack of time. So here you're hearing it direct from the mouth of Ramakrishna, the master. Think about death and prepare for it by chanting the name of God, by singing the glories, by dancing, in that wonderful bliss, and enjoy that presence of God now. Don't put it off. It will improve the quality of life while you're alive, and actually, it will, like Vivekananda said. He says that religion does not exist to take away your enjoyment of life. Religion exists to teach you how to enjoy life so that you don't get stuck. And Balaram's father, Mani Malik and Beni Pal, were elderly men. Did the master give this instruction especially for their benefit? The master: Why do I ask you to think of God and chant his name in solitude? Living in the world day and night, one suffers from worries. Haven't you noticed brother killing brother for a foot of land? The Sikhs said to me, the cause of all worry and confusion is these three: land, lust, and money. You are leading a householder's life. Why should you be afraid of the world? When Rama said to Dasaratha that he was going to renounce the world, it worried his father, and the king sought counsel of Vasishta. Vasishta said to Rama, Rama, why should you give up the world? Reason with me. Is this world outside of God? What is there to renounce, and what is there to accept? Nothing whatever exists but God. It is Brahman alone that appears as Ishvara, Maya, living beings, and the universe. Balaram's father. This is one of the old men he was just talking to. It is very difficult, sir. Master. The aspirant, while practicing spiritual discipline, looks upon the world as the framework of illusion. Again, after the attainment of knowledge, the vision of God, this very world becomes to him a mansion of mirth. Right? So understand that your experience of your life has everything to do with your inner life, your inner world, what your attachments are, what your expectations are, what your hopes are, what your desires are, what your aversions and attractions are. And so if you are able to go inside and to quell that storm just by chanting the name of God, by remembering the pure love of your nature, remembering the pure wisdom of your nature, that if you can go and develop that space and develop your awareness of that space so that your desires begin to fade a bit because you don't need them anymore, and your misunderstandings about your nature and your wrong thinking about who you are, when all of that begins to become clearer for you, this world, which is a world of suffering, a world that was what drove Buddha into his practice, was trying to find the cure for suffering, and he found it, and Buddhism was born. The path of knowledge bore its fruit. And so here we see this, the way that you die beautifully, the way that you leave this world is the same way that you learn to live in this world. It's by remembering your nature, chanting the name of God, filling your heart with love and remembrance of who and what you are. And then it begins to spill out of you. It's not something you have to concentrate on. It's not something you have to work at. As this love and awareness of your nature builds in you, it just spills out because there's an infinite flow of it. It's only the ego that causes it to come out in short, tiny spurts that leave you hungry all the time. All of your desires, fulfilling your desires, it gives you a taste of that bliss, but only a taste. And so if you have to keep going and begging your senses for more pleasure, another experience, oh, what a tawdry affair that is. You give up your self-respect, you give up your dignity, and you become enslaved, you become addicted unnecessarily because you were simply paying attention in the wrong direction. You were paying attention to the body, paying attention to the mind, and serving them in their constant demand for pleasure, for fulfilling the desires. And so chanting the name of God will reverse that. It'll bring your awareness to your inner world where all of those things are produced. But it will give that awareness that's developing will cure the desires, because you'll become aware of the fact that you are what you desire. And that when you stop being distracted from that, you find that.
So, excuse me, Swamiji, so this will happen automatically, right? After
Yes.
one doesn't have to make an effort except for taking the name of God, right? This, like in ISKCON and all, they keep talking about, doing japa. So
Yes.
with this, I think, I don't know, but my little experience is that when you do a lot of japa, automatically things start happening on their own. Is that right?
Yes. Well, absolutely. Ultimately, everything happens on its own. Ultimately, you realize you're not the doer at all. That you're part of the divine play, that this body and mind are puppets. that you are the puppeteer, but that this is not your body and your mind. The entire world is you. The entire everything, way beyond the world. Everything is you. This sense of self. So yes, the closer you come to knowing yourself, the more you become yourself. The more you become aware of your divine image. When and for at first, yes, it's up front in the mind. It's even head knowledge at first, but even that helps. When you come to know that your real nature is loving, then you begin to notice when you're not loving, and you also know what to shoot for. When you feel like your life is empty, that it's meaningless, that there's nothing, and then you come to find out that your nature is love and wisdom, and you start acting according to love and wisdom. At first, it may be an act, but even the pretense will bring you a little bit closer. It's not harmful necessarily, but don't let that be the only thing. Then you become a glad hander, that's an awful thing. So you want to keep the practice going so that it goes deeper and deeper until that authenticity is released. Until you stop living in the mind, which is where inauthentic living comes from. It's by living according to thought and according to desires. When you pull your sense of self out of the mind and out of the thoughts and place it in the heart, when you find that steadiness of the unchanging absolute in the heart, in the shrine of your heart, where an infinite well of love exists, then yes, it becomes more and more automatic, as you say, but it's not automatic. It's who you are. And you start to become authentic, which is effortless. Authenticity is effortless. It is what you are. And so you become.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I know someone here local who has had zero renunciation, but does a lot of japa. So, because what I struggle with is so many things to worry about. Okay, give up anger, detachment, renunciation, and there are 1,001 things to focus on. One is wondering. So, I mean, there's so much to, juggle and remember all the time. So, to make it simple, just do japa.
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah, but if there's no renunciation and a lot of japa, then what happens?
Then bipolar happens. You split your mind. Yes. Well, then you're not being. Remember, Ramakrishna says that the most important thing in spiritual life, or one of the three most important things, is that earnestness and sincerity. If you're just doing japam and it's not creating a renunciation, then you need to amp up your sincerity a bit, or it's not really happening. A person may say they're doing lots and lots and lots of japa, and they may not be, or it's just a matter of time. It really, you would have to know the individual or know the situation to be able to answer that question accurately.
Right.
But it's not natural. It's not a natural thing for someone who does a lot of japam to not. They may not notice their renunciation because it's becoming authentic. They're not wanting those things as much. But if that's not happening, then it's there's trouble there somewhere. It's an invitation for some inward looking around.
Right.
Find out what's going on, because that's not a natural event. A natural progression happens. The presence of God relieves desire because it is the source. It is the answer to all desire. And if you're still running after things of the world, there is a space where it could be the habits are so deep that they're just idling, like an old car when you turn it off and it still rumbles on for a few seconds. That can happen in spiritual life where you've been, you're habituated to your deeds, but inside you're turning to gold, but the outside deeds are still running on empty, as it were. And they may suddenly stop at some point, all go away at once, which can happen.
Right.
But anyway, whatever the individual situation is, we can't say. But just know that it's that the natural progression is the more you fill your mind with thoughts and awareness of love, the more loving you become. And the more that you experience that divine bliss inside, the less that you're looking forward to a night on the town, the less that you need distractions.
Yeah.
You just don't need them.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Sure. Okay, where were we? So this very world becomes to him a mansion of mirth. It is written in the books of the Vaishnavas, God can be attained through faith alone. Reasoning pushes him far away. Faith alone. What faith Krishna Kishore had at Vrindavan, a low-caste man drew water for him from a well. Krishna Kishore said to him, repeat the name of Shiva. After the man had repeated the name of Shiva, Krishna Kishore unhesitatingly drank the water. He used to say, if a man chants the name of God, does he need to spend money any more for the atonement of his sin? How foolish. He was amazed to see people worshiping God with the sacred Tulsi leaf in order to get rid of their illnesses. At the bathing ghat, he said to us, please bless me that I may pass my days repeating Rama's holy name. Whenever I went to his house, he would dance with joy at the sight of me. Rama said to Lakshmana, brother, whenever you find people singing and dancing in the ecstasy of divine love, know for certain that I am there. Chaitanya is an example of such ecstatic love. He laughed and wept and danced and sang in divine ecstasy. He was an incarnation. God incarnated himself through Chaitanya. Sri Ramakrishna sang a song describing the divine love of Chaitanya. Then Balaram's father, Bani Malik, Banipal, and several other devotees took leave of the master. What an amazing scene that would be. But this story of the untouchable, giving this Brahmin a glass of water, culturally it's hard for us to understand that, but it would be like, pardon me for this whole example, but just think of the dirtiest, craziest homeless man coming to you, with a glass of water that's in his hand that's, filthy dirty and his nails caked up, and he hands that to you, and you say to him, just chant the name of Shiva once, and he chants the name of Shiva, and then you just take that glass and you drink it with absolutely no question whatsoever in your mind about its purity. For us in a Western context, that would be a very similar act to what was happening here. It's that kind of faith in the name of God that it makes everything pure, and that no matter what the condition of any person is, when they're seen through that lens, that also gives you a clue to the eyes of an enlightened soul, because you look at like a Mother Teresa, or what I know of her, I've heard different things, but in her ministry, that she would pick up these lepers in her arms and carry them to the hospital herself. How does that happen? That happens through faith in the name of God. Faith that you'll do what you do because you love, and that there is no other thing more important than that, and that you just surrender to the divine. You'll just say, well, the divine will take care of me, or he won't. Either way, what can I do but love? What can I do but care? And so it's approaching that state when, with the enlightened soul, they don't judge the world like that, because they are full of that divine love. They look at others and can only see that divine love in them, even if it exists only as a bare spark. They see that first and foremost, and that's the most important thing in every one of us. That divine light, which is ours by birth, not by accomplishment, not by religion, not by practice, but by the essence of what we are. And so seeing that in yourself, knowing that in yourself, and living that in yourself, then you easily see it in others, and your behaviors toward them are no longer based on the less important things. It's based on love. And that's why we practice. That's why we think of God. In the evening, the devotees from Kansoritola and Calcutta arrived. The master danced and sang with them in a state of divine fervor. After dancing, he went into a spiritual mood and said, I shall go part of the way myself. Kishori came forward to massage his feet, but the master did not allow anyone to touch him. Ishan arrived. The master was seated, still in a spiritual mood. After a while, he became engaged in talk with Ishan. It was Ishan's desire to practice the Purushcharana of the Gayatri. Master to Ishan, follow your own intuition. I hope there is no more doubt in your mind. Is there any? The path of the Vedas is not meant for the Kali Yuga. The path of Tantra is efficacious, right? So the path he's talking here, it's similar to the idea of jnana and bhakti. He says in this age, we don't really have the time in our culture to practice jnana. Jnana requires, once you remove the idea of being a body and mind, once you've, through great practice and great effort, removed me and mine from your mind, if you, on the way to doing that, if you're all day long hanging out in a world that only sees me and mine, it's very difficult for that to take root. It's very difficult to be successful. It's a very long and arduous way to go. And so in this age, where everything is so frantic and everything is based on money, everything is based on desire, billboards and advertisements, and everything constantly trying to make you insecure in yourself, telling you that your body smells, telling you that your hair is falling out. All of these things begin to happen, and we lose our sense of self so easily and so quickly. And so bhakti yoga, the idea of the presence of God within us, and the knowledge that we carry this divine beloved with us everywhere, and to remember it as relationship. He says that's the fastest way in this day and age, because that's easy, because we can stay dual and still love God. We can stay dual and still serve him and see him in each other. And so it's a much faster path, because in bhakti yoga, the path and the goal are the same. The path is love. The path is the practice of love, and the goal is the fulfillment of love. So bhakti yoga is much easier in a path in a time where the world is really enslaved, to desire and to the external world. I'm going to turn my camera around here because we're getting a start of a very beautiful sunset. I want to share it with you real quick. Oh, it doesn't look like anything in the picture. It just looks like a cloudy night. That's hilarious. I'll wait and see if it gets better. Sorry, it's really spectacular from here. The camera makes everything so far away and so small. My goodness. Anyway.
Where are you, Swamiji?
What's that?
Where are you?
I am in the desert just outside of Santa Fe.
Oh, wow.
New Mexico. Yeah, I came down. I did two retreats this week, one in Albuquerque and then one here today. The day after tomorrow, I head back up to Colorado. Okay. All right. So he was telling us the path for this age is really the bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. Ishan, I have almost resolved to perform an atonement ceremony, Master. Do you mean to say that one cannot follow the path of Tantra? He said, he's basically saying, didn't you just hear what I said? That which is Brahman is also Shakti, Kali. He's saying, so realization of the absolute isn't any better. He says the realization of Kali, which means the realization of the manifested, God, the personal God, the manifestation, seeing God in the manifest, is just as high as seeing God in the ultimate reality, that on the other side. He says that which is Brahman is also Shakti, Kali. Knowing the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman, I have discarded once for all both righteousness and sin. Right? So that difference is no longer there. The duality begins to break. You see that the power of God, this world, the universe, the manifestation, the divine mother, and Brahman, that unchanging absolute, that they're the same, that they are not different, and so one is not above the other. Ishan, it is mentioned in the hymn and the Chandi that Brahman alone is the primal energy. Brahman is identical with Shakti. Master, It will not do to simply to express that idea in words. Only when you assimilate it will it be well with you. Right? So we can all know these things. That's what he's saying. It's like spiritual life is not a matter of what you know. It's a matter of what you assimilate. Right? Vivekananda says, if you want to know how spiritual are, there's two questions you can ask yourself. One, am I unselfish? And he says, to the degree that you are unselfish, to that degree you are spiritual. And the second question is like it. Unselfish is kind of like the defensive position. And am I loving? That's the proactive side. Am I loving? To the degree that you can say, yes, you're loving, to that degree, you have grown spiritually. And so really all of the other stuff, religion itself is not the point. These facts and figures and philosophies and dogmas and doctrines, they're only scaffoldings. They have no other importance than to take you to the goal. They themselves are not the goal. And just knowing them isn't going to do anything for you. It's not just a matter of believing something. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of knowing, a much deeper belief, an actual knowing of something. And that happens through practice. That happens through contemplation. That happens by being aware of all times, of the presence of the beloved within you and the nature within you, your divine nature as pure love. And then seeing through practice that it works, seeing through practice that your life becomes fulfilling as you start loving people. I like this notion. What is those random acts of kindness, bumper stickers? That's a great practice, just random acts of kindness. Why? Because it keeps you remembering. It keeps you aware of your nature. And it's a joyful way of living. You see these YouTubers these days. It's very popular nowadays to go out and film yourself feeding homeless people or giving away laptops and all this stuff, which of course is a very cheap form of it, because you're not really being generous. You're just simply performing for attention and for success maybe in your channel. But which do you want to focus on? I always look at those and I just take the joy of seeing that divine bliss and seeing that happiness of the person receiving that gift, regardless of the giver's problems, right? So when you see good, don't focus on the bad. Yes, the other side is polluting. It's yucky, that he's filming himself doing this, but don't choose to emphasize that. Emphasize the good and fan it. Emphasize the good in this world. There's going to be faults in it for a long time, just like there are in ourselves. But just because you can't do something purely doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Practice it, and then next time try and do better. But don't not do it because you think you can't do it well. Get up there and do it. Do it for name and fame if that's the only reason you can do it. Better to do it for name and fame than to do it for nothing, right? Work on the name and fame. Let it go away in time. Be aware of it. That will take care of it in time. But don't stop yourself because you think you'll be a hypocrite. Be a hypocrite and do it. And then work on being a hypocrite, not being a hypocrite. But get out there, take a chance. You might be surprised. You may find that you're not as much of a hypocrite as you think. All right. So it will not do simply to express that idea in words. Only when you assimilate it will all be well with you. When the heart becomes pure through the practice of spiritual discipline, then one rightly feels that God alone is the doer. You see, that's the ultimate. That's where it's going to end. You're going to realize that you are really the observer, and that it's been your blessing in this world and in this life to observe the actions of the beloved, of the divine. He says, you will see that one rightly feels that God alone is the doer. He alone has become mind, life, and intelligence. We are only his instruments. Thou it is that holdest the elephant in the mire, and thou that helpest the lame man to scale the loftiest hill. When your heart becomes pure, then you will realize that it is God who makes us perform such rites as the Purushcharana. Thou workest thine own work, men only call it theirs. All doubts disappear after the realization of God. Then the devotee meets the favorable wind. He becomes free from worry. He is like the boatman who, when favorable wind blows, unfurls the sail, holds the rudder lightly, and enjoys a smoke. Ishan took his leave, and Sri Ramakrishna talked with M. No one else was present. He asked M what he thought of Narendra, Rakal, Adhar, and Hazra, and whether they were guileless. And asked the master, what do you think of me? M said, you are simple, and at the same time deep. It is extremely difficult to understand you. Sri Ramakrishna laughed. All right, we'll stop there.